Wednesday, August 18th.
Can't hear you.
For August 18th, 2021.
Louder.
Okay.
Welcome, everyone. Hi.
Thank
Is that
you.
better? Okay. Thank you for coming for our meeting tonight, which is our business meeting for August 18th, Wednesday, 2021. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin, I'd like to read this. We have some required notifications. Please note the city abides by New York State and the CDC's requirement that unvaccinated individuals continue to wear masks indoors and remain at a 6-foot social distance, which includes in City Hall and at public meetings like this one. If you're vaccinated, you do not have to wear a mask during the public meeting or be socially distanced. However, if you appear ill or present with COVID-19 symptoms, staff may ask you to leave, distance, or wear a mask regardless of your vaccination status. This meeting is being recorded with video and audio. Roll call, please.
Councilman Scaringi? Present. Councilwoman Riley?
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Present.
Councilman Burns?
Present.
Councilman Strawn?
Present.
Councilman Scanlon?
Present.
And President Rusnetti.
Present.
That's all 7 here.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on to approval of minutes. Councilman Scaringi?
Thank you, Madam President. I stand and ask for unanimous approval for the meeting minutes from August 4th to 2021 business meeting and the August 11th, 2021 special business meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to our public hearing. City residents are welcome to speak. You'll have 5 minutes to discuss the topic of today's public hearing. Please be respectful. Mr. Clerk, can you please let them know how they can participate?
Oh,
Okay. I will do my best. I'll say that again. Let's move into our public hearing. City residents are welcome to speak. You'll have 5 minutes each to talk about the topic of our public hearing today. Please be respectful. And Mr. Clerk, tell them how they can participate.
Okay, this is a public hearing regarding a proposed zoning amendment to rezone the following parcels from R3 Residential Multi-Unit Dwelling District to C1 Service Commercial District. The addresses are 20 Mendelssohn Street, 22 Mendelssohn Street, 28 Mendelssohn Street, a portion of 151 Laurel Ave, and inside lot. To participate in tonight's public comment, please come up one by one. Be sure to sign in, and please announce your full name and address for the record. Also, we have one letter to read for the public hearing tonight. Would you like to do that now?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, this is from David Zuby. He lives on Mendelssohn Street. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the courtesy of providing this email to City Council with regard to the proposed zoning of 2022-28 Mendelssohn Street from R3 Residential Multi-Unit Dwelling District to C1 Service Commercial District. Given the recent upturn in COVID cases in the city, my wife asked me not to personally attend the council meeting concerning this matter scheduled for this evening at 6 p.m. My wife and I own the residence located at 8 Mendelssohn Street. Over the past decade, it has become obvious that this is a stable residential neighborhood. Indeed, a number of residences have shown considerable improvements made by current and new owners. Notably, Bates Troy trucks travel through the neighborhood from early morning through late evening, and there is considerable noise from Bates Troy operation, which impacts the neighborhood as well. Nevertheless, Mendelssohn Street neighborhood remains a solid residential west side location. We are opposed to the proposed rezoning now proposed, which we assume is at the behest of Bates Troy. By seeking rezoning, one can reasonably expect that the purpose is to further expand the Bates Troy operation to the obvious degradation of the residential nature of the neighborhood. In this regard, Bates Troy certainly was aware of the zoning configuration of this neighborhood at the time that it commenced its current operations. Similarly, the owners of the single-unit and multi-unit dwellings of Mendelssohn Street properties presumably also knew of the zoning when they acquired their prospective parcels. All concerned certainly would have had the reasonable expectation that the neighborhood would not be changed by the rezoning to a commercial use. We all made our bed in this regard, and all, including Bates Troy, should continue to sleep in it as it was made. I thank City Council for its consideration of the proposed rezoning and hope City Council sees the benefit of retaining the current zoning. Sincerely, David Zuby.
Thank you. No other letters? Do we have speakers? Go ahead. Oh.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Campbell. I'm an attorney with Hinman, Howard, and Cattell, representing the applicant, Bates Troy. I have with me tonight Brian Cragen, the principal of Bates Troy, and I'll sign in a sec. As the board knows, we have made, I think, 2 presentations to you over the course of the last several months. We're seeking rezoning of 2 parcels that have previously not been utilized for the business. They are 2 vacant parcels, 20 and 22, and also rezoning for part of the campus that is currently being utilized for the business, but the property is split zone. So the 2 parcels are, again, 20 and 22 Mendelssohn. They are vacant parcels. The proposal is to utilize them for parking for employees and trucks. Part of the impetus in acquiring those parcels was to provide an opportunity for employees to get off the street in terms of street parking, and also to provide that opportunity as well for the existing truck traffic. This is not a request for expansion of the physical plant in any way, or expansion of the business at all. The application has been through a few different channels. It's been to the Planning Commission for site plan review, which was granted, I think, a little over a month ago. They also made a negative declaration for their secret determination and recommended that for you as well, identifying no significant environmental impacts with respect to the project at all. The parking lots are part of a site plan that was submitted to you and the Planning Commission, which includes stockade fence and landscaping, and which includes an extensive variety of trees and shrubs. Bates Troy, as you know, has been at this location for many years, dating back to the late 1800s, serves over 5,000 patient beds a day in the regional hospitals and nursing homes. They employ approximately 125 people with a diverse multicultural workforce, which includes in large percentage individuals with disabilities, both at this campus and at the individuals' off-site workplaces. So the impetus for this whole project was just the acquisition of those 2 parcels and to add parking. During the pandemic, it became very clear that because of the split zoning of the property, that it was difficult to deal with different zoning regulations because the property is just split down the middle. So I've also provided to you letters of recommendation and support from both hospitals. I trust that you have received those today from UHS and Lourdes. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to be very clear that this is not an expansion of the business in any way, just an opportunity to get some cars and trucks off the street and provide that parking for the employees, and also just to unify the whole campus in one zoning classification. I know you also, and I've showed you the zoning map, which shows the majority of the parcels and the active campus already is zoned commercial, but just this little back part is not. And I'm sure. I certainly will answer any questions at the board's direction, but otherwise, I'm here for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers?
John Solak, Binghamton, New York. Normally, I would confine my remarks, but since we got into, we got a little off the subject, I provided you with a copy in my concerns about the allegations in a recently filed lawsuit that was dismissed on a technicality that had nothing to do with the merits of the...
I'm sorry, Mr. Solak. This is a public hearing regarding the rezoning. There'll be public comment after.
Wait just a minute, Ken. She just went on about the Cragins and the healthcare business.
Okay,
and letters.
no, I just want to
I'm-
make sure if your comments are going to be related to the application, that's fine.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak later.
Yeah,
That's fine.
absolutely, because I'm concerned that that site is polluted. That's what I'm concerned about, and that pollution, that plume run all the way up to Horace Mann. And I asked you to check it out, I never heard back from you. I asked the city to go in, because the allegations of the lawsuit, the city's been cheated for years. For years. Now, you have that in your files, and you did nothing. Absolutely nothing on it. There was some problem with a spill of some sort. The allegations are, furthermore, that the city was cheated. Cheated. Now, I spoke to the UHS. I'll call them again today. They told me, and the allegations are, is that Bates Troy cheated hospitals. You know, you want to throw out references from the healthcare industry and talk about the great service that Bates Troy does to the healthcare industry. Let's look at the allegations in that lawsuit. Again, unrefuted. I spoke to the district attorney in Onondaga County. I spoke to UHS. They told me that they called me back a couple of days later, say, we're working on it. So if we're going to sit and talk about what solid citizens Bates Troy is, let's have an answer. Since Mr. Frank's office has been sitting on this for a long time, And this is very, very damaging. People may remember, and for the lack of a better word, where the Belmar is, that was called McMahon's site. But that they didn't know the history of that building. There was a silk screener that in that building that 20 years ago, and then they blamed it on the McMahons. So look, let's get real. This is a lousy company. They're a lousy company. And unless you receive some satisfaction that that ground is not polluted, and I don't think the seeker request knew of this information. This guy essentially, he was a partner in the business. He's an eyewitness to a lot of this stuff. So let's get him down here, and let's see what's going on. But I'm telling you something. You know the way this pollution works. You know damn well the way it works. Someday somebody's going to be born down at Horace Mann, and they're going to find, well, what the heck's this? The heck's this? And you know that the city's been cheated. Unless the attorney that filed the case and unless the complainant are liars, unless the attorney filed a fraudulent lawsuit with fraudulent allegations, but Mr. Frank's office has been sitting with this stuff. He's done nothing. To my knowledge, I never heard back from code. So that block, that whole damn block, that damn 2 blocks is at risk. There's no question about it. So if you want to reenact Endicott Part 2, go right ahead. And I think there's something fishy going on, too, because while IBM was polluting, they were buying houses and turning them into parking lots.
Do we have any other speakers?
I'll go for it. Can you hear me? I was feeling inspired listening to the two folks. Well, the letter that was read out and the person who just spoke before me. My name is Tina Chronopolos. I live on Laurel Avenue, and I just thought I'd read you a little bit about the environmental impacts of dry cleaning, which I kind of was aware of, but not entirely. So, dry cleaner establishments, this is from an organization called the Environmental Pollution Centers. Dry cleaner establishments are quite common in urban settings. And so is the contamination that is associated with dry cleaning activities. Such contamination may pose serious health risks due to its nature and resistance to environmental degradation. Specifically, chlorinated solvents, especially PCE, are associated with dry cleaning activities. Such chemicals are toxic, mobile in the environment, especially through their volatile nature, and the chemical pollution they create may persist for decades due to their resistance to degradation. Of course, I didn't come here tonight to talk to you about Bates Troy. You'll hear what I have to say in a minute. But I agree with the previous speaker that trying to position Bates Troy as some kind of fantastic company that employs all sorts of diverse folks does not detract from the fact that they have, in fact, in the past, seemingly hidden spills in their facility, not reported them, not cleaned them up correctly, right? And I'm worried here that in this hearing, what we have is residents voicing their concerns, and then, of course, as they are allowed to, Bates Troy rolling in with the lawyer. You know, the law is not equal in this country. You know this. Justice does not exist in this country. If you have money in this country, you can get whatever you want. You can even get justice on your side. So we have a company. We have a company coming in here with their lawyer telling us that they're an upstanding citizen. And I'm just worried that you will listen to them and not to the residents. And if I'm not wrong, isn't there a zoning planning committee? No, there's a zoning committee, which is different from the planning committee. And isn't the same firm that Bates Troy employs, doesn't that same firm also have a lawyer on that zoning committee? Am I wrong? And doesn't that zoning committee person who's a lawyer at the same company also have a tie to somebody on city council? I may be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to talk later about conflict of interest, but I just thought I'd float that. Thanks for your time.
Do we have any other speakers?
I'm not quite sure. I'm Marion Kratz. I live at on Laurel Avenue, right before Bates Troy factory. They've done a lot of improvements this past year, the sidewalk, the driveway, and everything, but there's still a lot that needs to be done. I hope that making the zoning different doesn't bring more trucks in, because now there is like 11 to 14 tractor trailers plus trucks in their lot, and that's a lot for a city. And the recent thing that I had problems with was lint balls all over the place, about this big. And I took it to the office and told them about it, and still there were lint balls all over the place, which probably means that the filters aren't being cleaned. I don't know. But you live next door, you try to keep your place okay, and people are nice there. I don't have any problems with them. They're very good. But I do think we ought to limit what we allow in the city. And I think, you know, the air, for one thing, can't be that good. I got asthma since I moved in there years ago. And I don't know whether it's from that or from years of my husband smoking way back then. But I got it more recently. And I'm not sure whether it's the air or not. So I would say limit it I don't know what the zoning they're trying to get in there and what it's for, but I say limit it because it is the city still. And really, on the whole, you would put a company that size out into the country somewhere. But we have it here. They have good business, and they do a good business, and give a lot of people jobs. So I would say keep it here, but limit how much more they can change the zoning. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
Okay, hold on a minute. One more thing, the cleanup of the businesses around here, really bad. The corner of the laundromat at the corner of Laurel and Main Street is absolutely filthy with garbage and that, and it smells bad. No one's doing anything about it. I saw in the paper where they were doing this to some of the businesses. And I'm passing around pictures of different areas around there that need cleaning up, which would make our city look a lot nicer.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay. I will accept a motion to close the public hearing so we can move on to public comment.
So moved.
Thank you. Let's move on to public comment. Again, city residents are welcome to speak.
I'm sorry, just confirm, all in favor?
All in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
All city residents are welcome to speak. You'll have 5 minutes to discuss city issues. I ask you to please be respectful. Mr. Clerk, could you please let everybody know how they can participate?
So again, you can come up and please sign in, and please state your full name and address for the record.
My name is Tarek Abdelazam. I'm in Binghamton on Tremont. I have been raising concerns that this administration had a plan on laundering some of our recovery dollars through the general fund. And at the Monday work session, Mayor David and Binghamton City Comptroller Chuck Shager said it on record that that's exactly what they're doing. The language was unambiguous, unequivocal, and what was so gross about it was that it was said with pride, with glee, like it was a victory that they found a way to exploit a loophole to liberate these funds from the rules that compel you to prioritize and center the needs of those that have been harmed by this pandemic. That's a win for you and for the mayor. That's what it seems. I find that incredibly shameful, unethical, morally bankrupt. I'd ask you a question. The city receives about $2 million in community development block grant every year. And you know its use is to support low-income residents, low-income neighborhoods. If you found a loophole, basically you've just showed us who you are, that you would free and liberate those funds so you could support your constituency. I'm speechless. This is how white supremacy works, a toxic mix of classism and racism, and I know you bristle at that, but you really need, if you truly believe in an equitable society where we defeat racism, you have to sit with this. This word needs to be brought into our conversation more. This is a perfect demonstration of white supremacy, because these funds are supposed to help those who've been disproportionately impacted. Every research shows, all the data, that those who have been most harmed are poor people and people of color. And you're stealing those funds, pulling them out of this lockbox so you don't have to meet their needs. And you've said it. You want to support broad economic development that will help the whole community. You said it. Let's use this so we don't have to bond, which will help out our taxpayers. That's how white supremacy works. If you truly want to be on that journey of racial equity and justice, you need to find out why I'm saying this. Commit yourself. Maybe one day you'll realize it. But let me ask you this. How many tenants in the city, broken down by district, are behind in rent? New York Times report a few weeks ago said it was, I think, almost 7,500. The county was bragging that 1,900 tenants have already applied for emergency rental assistance. Where are the other 5,000? Do you know in your district how many? No, you don't know because you don't ask. The shelters, Broome County DSS is running out of CARES money. They're starting to evict homes from shelter stays. Let's launder funds so we can give taxpayers a break. Are you talking with the county about that? What is your strategy when the Delta variant emerges and we have a dark winter and more people are on the streets and the shelters are full? What's your strategy? What's the number? Food security. What has been the increase in visits to food banks? Do you know? No, you don't, because you haven't asked. Mental health needs. Has they increased?
You have
don't
1
know.
minute.
You don't know, because you don't care, and you haven't asked. Households with children. Does every household with children have internet service? Because we might be back in a condition with remote learning, and children have already lost an incredible amount of time because they're poor. Do you have a plan for that? No, you don't. Has anyone talked to the school district? Do they need more money to replace laptops that might have been broken or missing? Childcare needs. We knew this was a problem before. If you want to help grow the economy and help folks go back to work should they choose to, if there is actually living wage jobs, they need childcare. What's your plan for that? You don't have one. Homeowners, they had a chance to take an opportunity of forbearance. Those balloon payments are going to be coming due in months. How many homeowners in Binghamton took that option? How many are going to be in trouble? You don't know because you didn't ask. Your actions are
Your 5 minutes
shameful
is up.
and reckless.
Do we have another speaker?
John Solak, Binghamton, New York. I was at the IDA meeting, the county, the Empire Development, the IDA. Tens of millions of dollars to a local family, a wealthy family, has digs on Cape Cod to revitalize the Oakdale Mall. That's where this money's going. County's going to put in new storm sewers. Also at the IDA meeting, I saw Mayor Rich David. They renewed the Boscov arrangement. Now, we talk about bad landlords and good landlords in the residential space. Let's talk about bad landlords and good landlords in the commercial space. Boscov's is a disaster, and their brand, they're being blamed for the condition of that store. And Boscov's doesn't own the store. IDA owns the store. Now, on the one hand, the mayor condemns this bank building up there that, you know, if you really want to do an impartial judgment, is one of the better buildings, particularly when compared to Boscov's. So you can't tell me that that bank building up there is condemned. And I don't like the guy that owns it. Nobody likes that guy that owns it. But that's neither here nor there. You can't tell me that Boscov's is in better shape than that building over there. So Boscov's been here for 20, 30 years. Al Boscov, I liked, a straight shooter. But they haven't paid a dime to the school district. They haven't paid a dime to the city. Haven't paid a dime. So if that's success, fine. That's success. Welcome to the world of make-believe. But they're a lousy, the IDA's a lousy landlord. They're a lousy landlord. Just like the mayor was when he owned the dollar store. You may remember the dollar store, owned by Rich David, made a big six-figure profit, a couple $100,000, 300. The roof was always leaking. The tiles were always out. There was never a code inspection of the Family Dollar store when the mayor owned it. You know. So let's try to have some fair play. Now, unfortunately, I've got to go to the seamy side, what I call dirty Binghamton. The mayor's involved. He has a bizarre lifestyle. And his lifestyle, and I don't want to criticize anybody's lifestyle, but at a certain point, a man matures. You know, you expect certain things from 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and then when you get 45-year-old, you know, you got a guy that's a flake running around town that happens to be the mayor. That's of concern to me. Now, maybe only because of stability, you know, because a double-minded man is unstable in all ways, as the good book says. So anyway, there's some shenanigans going on with the mayor's sexual relationships, dovetailing with money that's being paid out of the city. Ken Frank has numerous, voluminous texts and letters. A mother and daughter are having sex with the mayor. The city owes or pays state or federal funds to these people. There's been allegations of invoice fraud. I don't know. All I know is the Corporation Council of this city is sitting on a lot of dirty business. They're sitting on a lot of texts and emails. Now, the question is, what is the Corporation Council's function in this? Are they representing the mayor or the city? Because if all these allegations, and the mayor does not, I don't know, who's the mayor's personal attorney? Do we know? I've never seen the mayor have an attorney other than the Corporation Counsel's office. So if we are paying for the representation of the mayor's dirty, dirty business, I object. You know, I don't mind Elizabeth Taylor, Eddie Fisher, I don't mind all these people. They pay their own bills, you know?
You have 1 minute.
Kardashian can do all she wants to do. She can pay her own bills. But the mayor of Binghamton, don't stick us with the legal bills for a shenanigans that has come back to haunt him. He's a low-lifer, as Donald Trump would say. A low-lifer. A real low-lifer. And he's unbecoming of this city. You know, no other city except Toronto had this problem. And finally, and you know how that ended, finally, where's that meeting where the mayor was at? Where's the video of that meeting where the mayor was acting erratically and some thought he was on drugs? Why was it erased? And where's the investigation into destruction of public records? Thank you. It's nice chatting with you.
Do we have another speaker?
Hello. My name is Colin Brown, and I live on Lincoln Avenue. And I, like many residents, am quite angry about how the mayor and 4 city council members have proceeded with the ARPA funds. The first reason I'm angry is this. Mayor David's proposals, which gained the support of 4 city council members, simply do not reflect the spirit of ARPA on any construal. This is most obvious with the $12.5 million that was transferred to the general fund. I know people have made these points before. I'm going to make them again. Sure, is that better? Great. So I'll start with a quote from the Department of Treasury, what they say ARPA funding's for. They say it, quote, offers broad flexibility to recipients to address local conditions, but it also identifies several ineligible uses. These include, quote, funding debt service, legal settlements or judgments, and deposits to rainy day funds or financial reserves. Further, general infrastructure spending is not covered as an eligible use outside of water, sewer, and broadband investments, or above the amount allocated under the revenue loss provision, end quote. So Binghamton's general fund, as you all know, is quite healthy, with over $12 million unassigned at the end of 2020. Given this, a $12.5 million transfer effectively sets that money aside as financial reserve, which is an ineligible use. I'm sure there's a technical distinction between financial reserves and general funds, but when your general fund has $12 million unassigned dollars left over at the end of the year, adding even more to that is in effect just setting aside financial reserves. Moreover, I'm still confused about how the $12.5 million transfer does not greatly exceed the amount permitted under revenue loss prevention, and therefore violate ARPA in letter as well as spirit. The comptroller calculated the revenue loss due to COVID at about 3.5 million, and I'm aware that ARPA permits a 4.1% inflationary index, and according to the comptroller, this brings the losses up to about 6.2 million. Now, how does that get doubled to 12.5 million? I'm yet to hear any explanation of that in plain language about how that doubling is not in violation of ARPA. And my worry, and honestly what I'm convinced of right now, is that no such explanation exists. But let me move on to my second reason for being angry. Regardless of how this money was allocated, I'm appalled at how these allocation decisions were made. Binghamton's going to receive $46 million of funding. That's huge for a city of this size, about $1,000 per resident. Such an influx of money calls for extensive public comment and deliberation. That's one of the reasons why you're given over 5 years to spend this money. There is simply no rush, no reason to do things as you did, other than to limit public influence and try to get things done before too many people could complain. Given the broad time horizon to spend this money, and given every citizen's interest in how it's spent, there's simply no good justification for pushing things through as quickly as Mayor David and the 4 Republican city council members did. Indeed, such an effort to push things through with minimal public comment reeks of paternalism and disregard for the many residents whose lives have been turned upside down as a result of COVID-19. Let me just conclude with one final consideration. Pushing this money through might have been justifiable if the city were in dire financial straits. But Mayor David himself has claimed that the opposite of this is the case. In his 2021 budget message, he bragged about how good of a financial position Binghamton was. About how, quote, the 2021 budget was prepared without banking on federal aid, and, quote, is not contingent on new federal funding. In hindsight, at least, Mayor David's comments strike me as blind to the amount of local need there actually is. But even assuming they were accurate, there's no rush to allocate these funds and deny Binghamton residents the opportunity to comment and debate. The funds wouldn't expire for years, and the city, at least according to the mayor, was not relying on the funds to make it financially whole. By rush allocating $23 million in ARPA funds, the mayor sidestepped the priorities and input of his constituents, and 4 members of city councils are actively complicit in that. This is an invasion of public accountability. We deserve better. I know the ship has sailed on this round, but I hope we get better on the second round of funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers?
My name is John Patterson. I live at 184 Helen Street in Binghamton. I've been a resident for many years there with my wife, and I find the city of Binghamton a very pleasant place to live. And I know that I've been on city council myself, not here but other places, and I know these things are very difficult decisions to make. And so, and it's great to hear what the audience has to say, so it helps you make your decision. What I'd like to just consider, listening to what I'm hearing, is the city is in very good financial straits. So why not take our time in spending this money? Why not do some real investigation? What is the rush? In doing that, why not take out a bonds to carry this? Because the bond rates are super low right now. We all know this. If you don't, you should look at the paper and figure it out. So now's the time to borrow money allocate it back over 20 or 30 years, whatever the bond rate term is. Then when you decide what you're going to be doing, and you do a good job of researching and doing what the public wants, then you pay off that bond. It won't cost you that much money. It won't take that much out of the treasury to carry that over a term of maybe 1 year to figure out what is the best for the city. Why rush this now? These things are too complicated. And just again, listening to the people, there's a lot of controversies going on. I just say, table it, do your research, listen, do your explorations, what really is going on, bond the money, pay it back maybe a year from now or 2 years. It's not, the interest rates on bonds are so low. Why not take advantage of this? Why spend the money? You're in a good financial state. Why blow the budget? Why spend all that money when you don't have to? And then you pay it back when which makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much for your time.
Do we have another speaker?
Hello, my name is Marion Irwin. I'm a taxpayer of the City of Binghamton. My name is Marion Irwin. I'm a taxpayer for the City of Binghamton. I also am wondering what the motive is to rush things so quickly through City Council. I find that the information that I get by looking at Press Connects or whatever is extremely limited, and I feel that at times the government is taking advantage of this. What's the motive for putting all that money in the city? I think it's a very selfish reason. I think that there's a guy who was running for mayor, who's now running for state senate, and he wants to have a nice record. And I do not think you should rubber stamp this. This is supposed to be a government for the people, by the people, of the people. It's not supposed to be happening in back rooms. Now more than ever, we have to, protect our whole country and the motives that we have. And so I hope you'll very carefully consider your own roles as governors of our city and take this seriously and start thinking more about the whole city. I'm a taxpayer, but I don't want my fellow citizens to be suffering because of rent problems. That's a lot more important. If you looked in the Press Connects, there's a database that you can see. You can see that the funds that were given during the pandemic largely went to the bigger corporations of the city. There are very small businesses that managed to get themselves $1,000 or $2,000, while we had some big corporations that got $10 million. It's all public record. If you guys are doing any research, you would know this. Your responsibility is to this city, and I would like you to please follow through on that responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker?
My name is Robert Wilson. I live on Beethoven Street in Binghamton. I'm really looking forward to the 4 majority members changing their minds tonight because of the respectful tone that's coming from our dissenters this evening. Since tone is so definitive in your decision making, I'm really looking forward to your positive response to the folks who just spoke in a very calm tone without any insults. So I'll look forward to that, because otherwise people might get the idea that these lectures on respect and on responsiveness and talking about what's in your heart, if the vote doesn't change tonight, people might get the suspicion that that's all bullshit. They might begin to think that maybe the fact that the majority has not changed their vote on anything as a result of anything since it's been sworn in. Not once. So apparently your hearts have the same contents of, let's say, the mayor's colon. Because whatever he pulls out of it, you rubber stamp. It's happened every single time. Isn't that curious? And from the speech that Phil Strong gave last week about all the people who support all of these things, I assume we're to believe that residents are clamoring to implore the majority to vote as a block to rubber stamp whatever the mayor sends them. That they have a flood of emails in their inboxes from people begging them to vote as a block for whatever the mayor says. And I'm sure that they're receiving widespread support also for flushing this $12.5 million out of COVID recovery into the fund, and covering it up with talk of analytical approaches and flexibility and so on and so forth. As if when Aviva asked last week, or on Monday rather, about whether this move from restricted to unrestricted, which I've noticed now that this constant tinkering by the mayor's office, the wording has changed, as it has in many of the things that are in tonight's agenda. The move from restricted to unrestricted technically means that you can take COVID money that has a restricted purpose and you can do anything you want with it. And the response to that was basically, well, yeah, I mean, technically that's true, but it's pretty much incidental. It's not incidental. If it was incidental, you wouldn't have to unrestrict it. Or whatever the Orwellian, you change the language to account for lost revenue this time around. And this constant tinkering is something that also occurred in, interestingly enough, another topic that has received a huge amount of public resistance, which is the police. Because in the agenda on Monday, the last item was called union contract, and that's all that it said. And there was no attached documentation for that. And it turns out that, of course, as you know, means the contract with the police union, which is 30 plus pages and was inserted into this packet at some point in the last 36 hours, even though it was notarized on the 2nd of August. And I assume that that's because you're so respectful and responsive to everybody and you want nothing but transparency and everything is on the level and you don't make up bullshit to justify doing whatever the mayor instructs, instead of what the people behind me have been saying. I'd also just want to point out that the meeting, the special meeting, which is at the end of July, that the response to that, one of the things that we brought up at that meeting was that 9 people, 9 unhoused souls, died in the streets of this city in the month of July. It's now the 18th of August, and you haven't done anything about it. You haven't done anything about it. How many more have died in the period that you've chosen to do nothing because you're so respectful of us, and you're so responsive, and you're so accountable? How many people have died in the last 3 weeks because the 4 of you refuse to do anything to help people? That's the issue. That's what Tarek is talking about. This is a moral issue. This isn't going to go away with your bullshit about flexibility. It's not going to go away. It's contemptible. I've said this before, and instead of lecturing us on our tone, maybe you can address the moral question. And maybe you can talk about your voting records rather than your hearts.
Any other speakers?
Hello, I'm Cecily ONeil. I live on Helen Street in Binghamton. I'm a lifelong Binghamton resident, and my family has been here in Binghamton since the 1840s. We have a vested, long-term interest in this beloved community. Anyone who knows me would never accuse me of trying to make a fashion statement, but tonight I'm wearing black because I am grieving for what's going on in this city. I'm grieving for the loss of the democratic process in my hometown. And I just want to cry. Just for a few examples, over the last several years, meeting after meeting, groups of people have come out to speak about supporting immigrants moving into our city. That was shot down by the mayor, by the slim majority on city council that supports the mayor. We wanted to encourage gardens and have modernized contemporary guidelines for community gardens or household gardens. Shot down again. I probably don't have to remind anybody about the debacle at the wastewater treatment plant. What a scandal that is for our community, the way that was handled. Now we're talking about appropriate usage of federal recovery funds for struggling families with children who may not have places to live, who may not have employment, and apparently this money is being diverted with the support of 4 city council members at the bequest of the mayor. I think this is shameful. We don't even know how many people will be infected with the new Delta variant of this virus, and we need to be prepared for that. We don't need to be diverting these funds ahead of time without community input. That is not the democratic process. I hope you will reconsider your ongoing unanimous support of whatever the mayor proposes and get back to what we teach our children is the democratic process, the voice of the people, instead of over and over again railroading through what this slim majority wants. Let's listen to the people and do the right thing. My heart is breaking, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there another speaker?
Ruth Blizzard, Crestmont Road, Binghamton. Is that loud enough? I've been living in the area for 40 years, and I'm always remarking at how I can't figure out what's going on here. I don't understand what's going on here. It only got worse the other night when I listened to the recording of the work session the council just had about what to do with this ARPA money. What a bunch of political gobbledygook. I went on and said, what? Huh? What? Analytical method? What are you talking about? Well, thankfully, some of my colleagues have written some very useful reports about the finances of the city. And people, I want to thank everyone who's spoken tonight because every speaker has made it a little more clear to me. We have a very large surplus. $12.5 million that's not assigned to do anything. That's just extra money that the city has. That's a lot of money. And we don't have to decide what to do with all that ARPA money for 5 years. There's no urgency there. No urgency on either side there. But there are a lot of people who have lost their jobs. They can't put food on the table. They have to go to the corner church to get a meal if they want to eat. Or pick up food from their kids' schools if they want to eat. People have lost their health insurance. They can't go to the doctor. Not that we have enough doctors here anyway, because doctors don't want to stay here. Wonder what it is about this area. Doctors don't want to stay here. And people need mental health services. I'm a psychologist. I get calls constantly from people who say, I've called around and everybody's full. There's nobody that can see me, and I can't see them either. There's only one of me. We need to help people that have been harmed by COVID. And we have plenty of money to do it with. And we don't need to spend money on all these other things that the mayor would like to spend money on. We've got money in our fund, in our budget to do that. Money that hasn't even been assigned yet. It's just ridiculous. And I am absolutely horrified that all this stuff was discussed in a closed meeting. Public didn't know what was going to be talked about. Public wasn't invited to this meeting. And that, the mayor's got everything all earmarked for what's going to be spent. Why isn't this being put to a public meeting where the public can have input on how this money can be spent? Do we live in a democracy? Or what? So I would like all of you to search your hearts and consider what you think is truly right to do, regardless of your political future.
Good evening. My name is Tina Chronopolos. I live on Laurel Avenue in Sophia Resinitis district. Just a preamble, I repeat my request to allow people to make virtual comment. Also, are you paying the police officers for their overtime with COVID money? I've been wondering what to say tonight and how to say it, partly because it feels to me as if I'm talking to a wall. I mean, we know that the Republicans on council don't care because on the rare occasion that you do engage with us, you tell us 1, that we don't know what we're talking about, 2, that we're crazy, or 3, that what we say is stupid. It's hard for me to imagine where you find the gall to demand respect from someone like me when you have made it abundantly clear that you do not respect most of the folks who speak before you. And look at the way you're sitting there like a wet poodle. And don't get me started on the lack of an apology from anyone on council to Dr. Riley for their behavior at the working session 2 weeks ago. Which is why I found Sophia Resinitis' apology to Corporation Council especially egregious. Not to mention how you once again made it all about you when you said, it's not about me. Classic. You talk a big game about respect, civility, humanity, and cooperation, but I have yet to see any of the Republicans display these characteristics on a regular basis during council meetings. You are petulant when you are called out for your behavior, and you whine about the lack of engagement from your constituents. Well, have you tried engaging with them? Do you post anything on your Facebook other than we are doing a neighborhood cleanup? Is that going to solve the very serious problems of poverty, lack of housing, and jobs in the area? Are you kidding me? The way you regularly rubber stamp the mayor's requests shows me that you are most definitely not interested in solving real-world problems. And please spare us the BS at the end during the comment section. Just cut it out. I would like to voice my strong opposition tonight to the way that our mayor, with the help of Ken Frank and Republicans on City Council, plans to spend ARPA funds wired to the city earlier this year. There are many problems with the way you have decided to allocate the money. The one that's obviously most insidious and perhaps even borderline criminal, as my colleague before stated, is the ordinance to sweep $12 million into the city's general fund. Both Ken Frank and Rich David basically admitted during the working session this past Monday that this money, once it hits the general fund, will essentially be freed from the rules under which it should be spent. In other words, you will be able to use it in exactly the way you want, as opposed to the way the community sees fit. Let me remind you that Binghamton is the poorest city in the entire state. I did my research, as they say, on QAnon. That safe and affordable housing is almost impossible to come by, and that many folks who live here are working poor. The working poor cannot afford to play golf or tennis, neither can many of them afford time to come before you and tell their story. And when they do, you rarely listen. You are supposed to use this money to help retain jobs, to support immediate economic stabilization, not just for businesses, but also for households. And that you are supposed to look for solutions that contribute to the unequal impact of the pandemic. I hope you will vote no on all of these measures tonight. Finally, this is your monthly reminder that the board of the sewage treatment plant held its monthly meeting last week. As usual, not a single one of the Republicans on this council was in attendance. Since I have started paying attention to these board meetings in March, none of you have made time to sit in. I point this out to you because this past spring, you tried to tell us no. In fact, you pretended that you were interested and that you cared, both about the plant and the staff who work there. So I'm not sure why I should respect people who lie to the public about their commitment, as well as try to gaslight those who know what's going on about the plant. Speaking of which, I would like to know where the money is coming from to pay for this audit from Veolia. Have you conferred with your colleagues on the JC Village Board? You realize that you need their input, right? Or wait, are you hoping to go this alone? Both in the face of huge resistance from the community, as well as the failure of this to pass the JC Village Board? What exactly is it that motivates you, and especially our City Boy 2280 mayor, to push so hard for this audit, which you did not advertise widely, and which can be carried out by other firms also, huh? Anyone? Time is running out, or I would have been able to muse on the mayor's own behavior as it relates to public art and conflict of interest, as well as his private business dealings and aspirations to our office. Alas, I must leave you hanging. Thank you for your time.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we can move on if there are no more speakers. Thank you, everyone, who participated. Thank you, everybody, who participated. I don't see any other speakers. We will move on to the next piece of our meeting tonight. So we're going to move on to preferred agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything from the preferred agenda before we proceed?
Yes.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Oh, no, I apologize. No.
Okay. Okay, then. Mr. Clerk, could you please introduce the preferred agenda items?
Okay, the first item on tonight's preferred agenda is introductory ordinance 21-82, considered in finance. And this is an ordinance to amend the 2021 home budget to close completed accounts.
Have any discussion? Okay, thank you. Next.
Next, we have introductory ordinance 21-83, considered in finance, and this is an ordinance to amend the 2021 CDBG budget to close completed accounts.
Any discussion? Next.
Next, we have introductory ordinance 21-84, considered in finance, and this is an ordinance to amend the 2021 capital fund budget to close bond lines that are no longer active.
Any discussion? Okay, next.
Next, we have introductory resolution 21-70, considered in planning, and this is a resolution to extend the existing agreements with the YWCA.
Any discussion? Okay, thank you. Next.
And the last item on the preferred agenda is introductory resolution 21-71, considered in Public Works and Parks Committee. And this is a resolution authorizing the City of Binghamton to accept a donation from the National Environmental Education Foundation in the amount of $1,000.
Any discussion? Thank you. Okay, I'll accept the motion to approve the preferred agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilman Scaringi,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Rosnetti.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 0 nays.
That passes.
Council President, point of clarification. Were there more letters received for public comment today? I think we were CC'd on a few.
Yes, there were. Thank you. Could you please read those two? Yes, thank you for that reminder.
Yes, I can do those now.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay, the first one is from Dorian Zaka. And they do not provide an address, but... So I would like my comments read into the public record. The U.S. Treasury Department has posted answers to frequently asked questions about the coronavirus. As it explains, the funds may be used for a variety of purposes to address the pandemic, but it is clear that they may not be...
Speak up.
But it is clear that...
Can you not? I cannot hear you. And we don't have a microphone.
But it is clear that they may not be just saved for discretionary spending later, and yet at your August 16th meeting, the city comptroller clearly states the mayor's intention is to move rescue plan money into the general fund to use however is needed. What is needed is Binghamton is precisely what the American Rescue Plan outlines. Only a local government that is out of touch with the needs of the community would actually look for other ways of of spending the money, and only a local government that wanted to remain opaque would take money earmarked with clear guidelines and throw it to the pot for a mysterious future use. The citation from the Treasury Department's guidelines is as follows. Question 4.1 asks, may recipients use funds to replenish a budget stabilization fund, rainy day fund, or similar reserve account? The answer is very clear. No. Funds may be made available to respond to the public health emergency and negative economic impact, are intended to help the pandemic response needs and provide immediate stabilization for housing and businesses. Contributions to rainy day fund and similar reserve funds would not address these need to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency, but rather be savings for the future spending needs. Similarly, funds may be available for the provision of governmental services and are intended to support the direct provision of services to citizens. Contributions to rainy day funds are not considered provisions of government services, such as expansions do not directly relate to the provision of government services. While doing this, may very well be possibly legal in that you search for a loophole and found one. It is absolutely not ethical and truly reprehensible. While other cities are conducting quantifying needs assessments that include all stakeholders, I'm not aware of any of the thorough outreach done by the city to truly ascertain need. I've only begun paying more attention to city council meetings this past year and have been very disheartened by what appears to be utter indifference to public comment on a number of issues. I respectfully request that you draw from your compassion and knowledge of this community, from your understanding of what is right for Binghamton as a community. Please use the rescue plan money for what is intended to help Binghamton businesses and Binghamton families recover and move forward. This should not be a partisan issue. Dorian Zaka. This is a letter from Amy Shapiro on Leroy Street. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry that I am unable to attend the City Council meeting in person. I would appreciate your consideration of my comments in writing. The U.S. Treasury Department has posted answers to frequently asked questions about the coronavirus. As it explains, the funds may be used for a variety of purposes to address the pandemic. It is clear that they may not be just saved in discretionary spending for later. Question 4.1 asks, may recipients use the funds to replenish a budget stabilization fund, rainy day fund, or similar reserve account? The answer is very clearly no. Funds may be made available to respond to the public health emergency and its negative economic impact, are intended to help more the pandemic response needs and provide immediate stabilization for housing and businesses. Contributions to rainy day funds and similar reserve funds would not address these need to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, but rather be savings for future spending needs. Similarly, the funds made available for the provision of governmental services are intended to support direct provision of services to citizens. Contributions to rainy day funds are not considered provision of government services, since such expansions do not directly relate to the provision of government services. To the extent that more money is going into the general fund than is necessary, has less impact of city finances, this requires the use of the funds would not be isolated. Council has a duty to ensure that the funds are being spent consistent with their purpose and in compliance with the rules for their use. I call on you to do so. Thank you, Amy Shapiro.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So next on the agenda, we have items on non-preferred. Next on the agenda, we have some items.
Did we vote on the preferred agenda? Was there a roll call vote?
We did, right? Yes.
There was?
we-
Okay, I apologize.
Yes,
7-0.
yes, we did. Yep. Okay, so first up, we have introductory ordinance 21-81, considered in finance. Councilman Strawn?
Thank you, Madam President. Ask Council for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-81, an ordinance to account for lost revenue of $12,494,152 for the American Rescue Plan Act guidelines.
Any discussion?
We need to.
That motion needs a second.
Oh,
Second.
any discussion? Councilwoman Freeman?
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I have to apologize. I lost my voice. I'm not sick, I promise. But I hope that you can hear me sufficiently. I want to commend everybody who came to this meeting and everybody who did research and submitted written comments and who are paying attention to what is going on. And I agree with everything that was said tonight. So I don't want to rehash what has already been said. But I will say something additionally is, I want to echo the sentiments that the public, the community, has made their voices heard. They have told us, both in a public forum and in, over emails and texts and in person, not only what they want the funds, the ARPA funds to be used for, but what they need the ARPA funds to be used for. So I can understand a rush if these were, this money was being used to help a dire need, people on the verge of becoming homeless or being evicted, or people who are experiencing mental health crises or exacerbated substance use disorder, or money to I don't know, and anything that was said tonight, and I have heard from my Republican counterparts that they have heard from their constituents about things that they want the money to be spent on, but I haven't. The only comments that I have heard at these meetings are that we are not responsibly spending this money. And so it is frustrating to me when I hear things like, well, I don't feel, my constituents don't feel comfortable coming to these meetings, and yet there has been no effort made to make public comment more accessible. like one of the speakers said. Right, so we can't, as elected officials, we can't have it both ways. We can't say, whoa, I heard, my constituents say this, but then not, they don't want to come to the meeting, but then I'm not going to make any effort to make the meetings more accessible. I can only say what I've heard from my constituents, what I heard from the people who attended the town hall on the ARPA funds, the people who have come to these meetings, and I have not heard a single comment from anybody that is in support of anything we have spent this money on thus far. And
Thank you. Do you have any other comments?
And I lost my train of thought. But this is, I don't mean to be hyperbolic by saying this is a matter of life and death for some people, right? It is. People are dying, not only because of COVID, but the repercussions of COVID. And COVID disproportionately affects people who cannot afford to isolate, who do not have jobs where they can work remotely, who do not have jobs where they have health care. And so this money needs to go to the people who are literally dying, or the families of those who have died because of COVID. And I feel like in a lot of these instances, we are flushing this money down the toilet. And it pains me to sit by and watch that happen.
Okay, do we have any other discussion? Councilwoman Riley?
Thank you, Council President. As you already know, since we heard that we were receiving this grant funding, and I will call it grant funding, from the ARPA funds that we have been talking about, I have been vocal about the needs that we have not been able to meet here in the city, affecting a majority of the city. We have gone back and forth about prioritizing needs. Even back to when we were discussing the budget, we wanted to know if there was an influx of cash, how would we prioritize the use of that money? And we talked about it at length. However, now that the money is here, those conversations have been erased from many of our memories. On August 2nd, I talked about the calculator that was sent by NICOM, the email that I wrote to NICOM regarding, because they were appointed as our person to discuss ARPA funds. They then sent the email back to you guys stating that, NICOM, it's the New York Council of Mayors, for those in the audience. We were told that that body was the body to contact to clarify ARPA use and how we plan to budget here in the city. That email was then subsequently forwarded back to the mayor. The mayor then sent it back to the entire council, which is fine. I'm not hiding anything. The calculator does allow for the 4.1 inflation. However, that is a broad analysis or calculation for cities across the country that are larger than ours, that have a larger budget than ours. And like our speaker said earlier, we proudly reported 3.1 million in losses. So the new calculation, even using the calculator from NICOM, does not add up. We asked for these calculations. I've not received them. Did any of you receive how the calculation was done for us in terms of this 12 million? I'm hearing nothing. I'm assuming you agree. We also asked for the losses. We talked about losses at length, particularly when we began to furlough city employees. Do you guys remember that discussion? And so for us to have people that we are accountable to that had to not come to work or be paid because of budgeting, and we're not prioritizing those employees that are our co-laborers for the city, not even to discuss the people that elected us in an office to again represent them and focus on the needs of the population. We're failing them. We are failing them. I also want to talk about the reason the city of Binghamton was eligible for $46 million is because of our poverty rate. Our poverty rate. It had nothing to do with the number of police cars we need. It has nothing to do with the roof. It has nothing to do with reallocating funds to talk about wish lists. And that's what was discussed on Monday. You don't even know the wish lists that people don't put in the budget. But now that we have this money, here comes the wish list, which again did not align with why we got the money in the first place, because of our poverty. Poverty. And when we don't hear that, when we don't hear the voices of the people that are crying, when we don't hear the public, and I've said it before, we could have an RFP process. I said that, Monday and on August 2nd? We can set up a process like the CDBG funding. Allow people to come with their proposals. We set up a rubric. We allocate the money based upon the best proposals, and we walk them through the process to address the most needs in our city. It would be open. It would be transparent. I said this here. I said it with the mayor. Why not? We want to have a government that hears the people and works for the people. And in order to do that, their voices, their processes, their needs, their desires must be heard. So my final point is, as we talk about this money, we always have to get clarification, because as you all know, most of the ideas that are coming down the pipe, whatever you want to call it, some of us hear through press releases. I get my information about legislation coming to be reviewed by a press release. And when we heard about the housing, $6 million to housing, we were like, oh, that's a start. That's the start, but it wasn't enough. But then we heard that the $6 million did not account for $6 million in this 23. The plan was to do $3 million and then allocate money we have yet to receive later down the road that is not under his control. So I said all of that to say that we were elected to be fiscally responsible for this city. We must we must expand opportunities to hear from the constituents. Tom, you said, hey, half of the people that come aren't the voice of the city, right? But when we campaigned, we knew how to reach the city. I bet you knocked on every door. I bet you called. Oh, you didn't knock on every door? Oh, okay. Well, I'm not looking for... Well, okay. Well, let me speak to someone else. The thing is, we knew how to reach our constituents. We did mailers. We did whatever we had to do to hear their voices and receive feedback. We talked about a survey for another issue that didn't even get the response rate to be a statistically valid decision-making strategy. So we need to do better, be it at public comment, be it posting on the news, be it posting on our website, something so that the voices are heard and we can prioritize spending of this money. And since we're talking about changing or accepting 12 million based upon losses, this is a problem, and this is our focus tonight. I don't know the calculations. I don't support it. And until I know how this was calculated, I don't think we should move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Burns? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. The American Rescue Plan, the $46 million, was given to our city, and there are some municipalities that are larger than ours that only got $5 million. We got the $46 million because we are called an entitlement city, and we're called an entitlement city because of all the poverty that we have in our city. The Chuck Shager, our comptroller, the other night at our work session, he said that he would, let's go back a couple of meetings ago. We hired a group called the Bondillo Group. They're an accounting firm that seems to be the experts in how, with the proper use of the American Rescue Fund. They're sort of like the, they're the guru, but when, who was it, Pontius Pilate washed his hands, and said, hey, it's not me, and that's what the Chuck and the Mayor are doing with this Bondillo Group. They're saying, well, they said it was okay. Well, what do you really think, though, in your hearts as we talk about? So, anyway, Chuck promised that we could have a meeting with the Bondillo Group, that they would come to a city council meeting and we could meet with them and go over all these losses that they now say that fit properly into the American Rescue Plan funds. So, and the mayor also promised to give us his breakdown of what he wants to do with the money, his vision for the money. And in that questioning, we discovered that he is already, I brought up to the fact, I said, Mayor, I counted up, you're over 23 million already. He got 23 million this year, and we're getting 23 million next year, and he is already getting into that. So I would like to hold this over. I would like to move to hold this over so that we can have these meetings, so we can have this meeting with this group, and then we can see what the mayor's breakdown, what he wants to spend the money on, and where the losses actually were. And I ask you that you don't, if we're going to have a special meeting, that we allow public comment at that special meeting, and that we don't have that meeting until we have the meeting with that group.
I
think we need a
second
second.
that motion.
Okay, thank you. So this item will be held over.
Sophia? Or, sorry.
I'm sorry?
I
didn't hear.
got you saying.
He's gonna second it.
No,
Thank you.
I'm just saying no, I didn't second it. I'm just saying I want to say something.
You want to say something?
Before we move on.
Okay, go ahead. You have a comment.
I just want to say that I agree with Councilman Riley and Burns in that sense that I'll not take responsibility, but the long agenda we had Monday night, they were on the agenda, and we did not hear from the Bondillo Group. And I did talk about analytical and stuff like that, but to be fair, we didn't hear from them, and I would also like to at least hear those numbers. Not saying which way it's going to go when we do it, but I would like to hear that information as well. I think that's fair. They were on the agenda, and I think they were waiting, but we're trying to be fair to people's time on Monday night as well, and it didn't happen. So I just think that that's a fair request to at least hear that calculation. The other thing I agree with is whatever ends up happening, but we definitely don't need to be in a pure hurry, and I think that we can at least hear that calculation and hear how they came up with it before we proceed. So I just want to say that.
Okay, thank you. So,
Madam President?
yes,
May I request that at our next work session, that Bondillo be
Absolutely.
placed first on the agenda with a sufficient amount of time to actually have a discussion about that? Thank you.
yes. Okay, so we're going to move on to introductory ordinance 12-85, which is considered in planning. We're going to move on to introductory ordinance 21-85, considered in planning, which is Mr. Councilman Strawn. I do want to say, though, although there's absolutely no conflict of interest, they have no financial gain or otherwise, because my husband's property is adjacent to the company Bates Troy, I would like to abstain. I know it can be very objective, but I would like to recuse myself. And I think I need to have a motion. Is that?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to allow you as a colleague to abstain from introductory ordinance 21-85 for the purposes that you just stated.
Second.
Thank you.
Does that need a vote?
You can do a voice vote.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
It now needs to be read into the record. Seeker first, but
Introduce the legislation first.
and then the seeker.
Then do seeker.
Thank you. Yeah.
Matter of fact, that you can come sit over here because you're not going to be involved.
Councilman Strawn?
Thank you. I ask Council for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-85, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Binghamton to rezone 4 tax lots related to Bates Troy Dry Cleaner. We do have a seeker motion affiliated with this that I need to do.
Can I just clarify on the title? It said 4, but if you look at your legislation, it's 5 lots. It's a portion of 151, that's the lot that's split, and another lot that doesn't have a street address, but does have a separate parcel number. So it is 5 lots.
Okay. Make a motion to issue a negative declaration under seeker for the following reasons. City Council received a request to amend the zoning for 5 parcels from R3 to C1 related to Bates Troy Dry Cleaners. On June 9, 2021, City Council declared itself as lead agency, determined the request is an unlisted action, and referred to the request to the Planning Commission pursuant to the City of Binghamton Code 410-103. Referral to Planning Commission on July 10, 2021, the Planning Commission considered the proposal rezoning and on or about July 28, 2021, issued a report in support of the rezoning. On August 18, 2021, the City Council held a public hearing. The proposed amendment to the zoning map to move 5 lots from a residential district to the adjacent commercial district is consistent with the existing uses on those lots, as well as with the character of the adjacent commercial corridor on Main Street. The zoning change is supported by the city's comprehensive plan and as such has been determined to be a sensible and beneficial change. In addition, the proposed change was reviewed by the City Planning Commission, which recommended approval of the rezoning and the issuance of a negative declaration under seeker. A full negative declaration is provided with the legislation.
I'll take a motion.
That was the motion. Second?
Second, please.
Second.
Voice vote now, please. Roll call, I'm sorry.
Roll.
Mr.
No, that's
Roll
just a
call?
voice vote on seeker.
Okay. All in
Oh,
favor?
I'm sorry, I apologize. On the neck, it should be a
Okay.
roll call. Sorry.
Roll call, please, Lee.
Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Aye.
Councilman Burns?
Aye.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
And President Resnetti abstains. So that's 6 ayes, 1 abstention.
Councilman Strawn, please.
Thank you. I ask for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-85, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Binghamton to rezone 5 tax lots related to Bates Troy Dry Cleaner. Sorry.
Roll call, please.
Second.
I'm sorry, any discussion on this? I'm sorry. Councilwoman Friedman, please.
Thank you, Temporary Council President. I'm not sure what your title.
President Pro Tem.
Pro Temp, okay. I was not expecting to do this, but I would like to make a motion to hold this over. I know this has been a long process. I've been to the Planning Commission meetings. However, it has come to light that there were documents that we were assumed to have received, that I received during the course of this meeting, so I have not had a chance to review these documents. And in an effort to make the most educated vote, I am therefore going to make a motion to hold this over.
Again.
All right, this is held over.
It's held over. Moving on to introductory ordinance 21-86, considered in finance. Councilman Strawn.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask Council for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-86, an ordinance amending the 2021 budget to allocate American Rescue Plan Act funds and fund balance for premium pay to essential workers.
Any discussion?
Second.
Call question?
Call the question, Madam President.
Roll call?
Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Aye.
Councilman Burns?
Aye.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
President Rosnetti?
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Next item is introductory resolution 21-69, considered in employees. Councilman Scaringi.
Thank you, Madam President. I stand and ask for unanimous consideration for introductory resolution 21-69, a resolution adopting the agreed-upon contract with the Police Benevolent Association for 2020, calendar year 2020 through calendar year 2024.
You have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Someone call question, please.
Call the question, Madam President.
Question called. Roll call?
Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Aye.
Councilman Burns?
Aye.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
President Rosnetti?
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Our last item is introductory resolution 21-72, considered in finance. Councilman Strawn.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask Council for unanimous consideration of introductory resolution 21-72, a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept second-round funding from the American Rescue Plan Act in the amount of $23,092,337.
Second.
Questions? Discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilman Burns.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to hold this over and discuss it at that same meeting with the how do I say it? Bonadillo group. Yes. My fear is that if the mayor accepts the $23 million that's not going to be delivered until next year, that he can then start spending next year's money, which he's already said he's doing. And, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with the Delta variant this winter. We don't know what's going to happen when people start getting evicted. We don't know what landlords we will be able to help from losing their houses. We don't. There's just so many elements of recovery that we have not covered, and yet we're into next year's money already. And we should be having this $23 million that we have. We should have a few $1 million at least going into the winter just for emergency purposes of the recovery. So I would like to hold this over and talk to them about why we are accepting this money.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So that is being held over. Oh, yes, Councilwoman Riley.
For this discussion, I would also like to have, if the company is now responsible for doing so, someone to outline the timeline as proposed in the CFR document. If funds are to be delivered for the second tranche in 2022, I want to know what has been released and what has been, what is expected, what is the timeline by which the money needs to be spent, all of those details so that it's not only available for us, but it's available for the public. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. So now we are moving on to council members' comments, and tonight we will be starting with District 5, so that would be Councilman Burns.
Thank you, Madam President. My comments for tonight, basically, I've already said. It was about the $46 million. And I just can't help but think that I see faces of people, and the money that we've spent, I don't see those faces. I just see a building. I just see brick and mortar. I don't see. I would like to help people that need help, and that's what I intend to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilman Strawn.
Thank you, Madam President. I saw some things on last week or the week before on social media. I just want to address this one last time, and I'm not gonna address it again. I sold my home on Conklin Ave, and I moved to the west side of my district. Period. End of story. My voting registration and DMV registrations are accurate. Councilman Burns even saw me out there mowing the lawn near near my lot, adjacent to Route 434. That's it. It is what it is. So my wife and I made a decision to sell our home. We bought another one in my district, and we live there. I also purchased with a partner the property next door, in which we provide 2 below market rental value units, one to a senior and one to a single mom. So that's the facts of the matter. I heard of somebody else mention in public comment community gardens. Fully in support of the new community gardens going in on New Street by Vines. Just happens to be a Saturday, which is September 11th. They are going to start those gardens, and I would love to see if people would come and help start building those gardens out with vines. Fully in support of that. I think it's going to be a great project. So I'd encourage people to consider coming and volunteering for them. I'm fully in support of those, and I think this is going to be a new addition to the city to provide green space and food and a place where people can have a quiet space to recreate. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Scanlon.
No comment tonight, Madam President.
Thank you. Mr. Councilman Scaringi.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam President. Just a few things. I definitely want to thank the Code Enforcement Department for helping out with a couple issues in the first district this week. We got some swift action and working with some homeowners and residents to clear that up, as well as the DPW for starting to get into roads, and the Parks Department that are helping with something near an adjacent property of the First Ward Park. Want to thank everyone who came down tonight to speak. Few things I wanted to discuss. I think at Monday's work session, Councilwoman Riley actually, and I followed up, had actually had some counterpoints with respect to the funding of the community center. And I had brought up the concern that I know a number of constituents and people that have also spoken here during public comment with respect to the level of bonding, so that the city has undertaken over many, many years. So I was happy to see that there was definitely some room to be worked with on that. As it relates to the second round of ARPA funds, I think it might be a good idea for, at a bare minimum, this body, as well as, and I think would hypothetically be the best way to go, in concert with the mayor's office and the executive branch, but at a bare minimum, with respect to process for the second round of the a little over 23 million, maybe we need to talk about in broad policy proposals proportionality as it relates to that second round. My understanding from my own research is, even though it was held over tonight, which was fine and consistent with a lot of the discussion that went on, so I understand why it was, but the RL to actually receive those funds was actually, as all of you know who read the agenda on tonight's docket, my understanding from the research that I've done is this is actually something that's been supported by the Biden administration to get these funds into the hands of municipalities as quickly as possible. It is true that it has not changed the timetable in which those funds can be spent. But my understanding from my research is that from the president and the federal government, for the purpose of positive economic impact, that has been one of the main drivers to move that forward, as well as obviously to assist those who need it. So I think a very frank discussion regarding proportionality, whether it be nonprofits, whether it be homelessness, whether it be allowed infrastructure under the American Rescue Plan, I think it might be a good idea to see if some consensus can be achieved regarding that and how that breakdown might actually be looked. Maybe that can be a broad template of how individual RLs and policy proposals for spending the money would be moving forward, particularly with that second round of funds. So I think that would be a positive opportunity for all of us. So with that being said, thank you again to everyone who spoke, and I yield back.
Councilman Scringy. Next, we have Councilwoman Riley.
Thank you, Council President. Again, as Councilman Burns said, I spoke a lot during the meeting, so I won't be before you long. However, I do want to recognize zoning code and I'm going to forget Juliet and Tito's group. Planning, yes. Because we've had a lot of concerns, a lot of questions. Those of you that know, I represent the 3rd District, and it is back to school time. And what we are seeing in many neighborhoods that are not zoned for housing of student groups in individual bedrooms, there has been a resurgence of single-family homes in areas zoned as single-family, then marketed as individual bedrooms rentals. So there have been a number of complaints, a number of emails, and I've been working with the team to address these concerns, and they have been responsive. I will say that. So I'm thankful for their responsiveness. Is there much work to be done? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I continue to encourage the constituents that have concerns. Not that we're complaining or not that they're complaining about students. We love our students. However, we should not hide behind the rules and the ordinances to house them. So I wanted to shout that group out for their responsiveness. I also want to celebrate my community has had several groups come out to conduct neighborhood cleanups. Unfortunately, mine didn't make the news, but I'm excited about the one that is coming up tomorrow if there's no rain. So what that does is show positive reinforcement. When one neighbor sees another neighbor and they see a group of people out cleaning, no, it doesn't address all the problems, but it leads to conversations. It leads to relationship building, and it encourages other groups to conduct cleanups themselves. So I'm excited about that, and I look forward to, hopefully, if we don't have a storm, participating tomorrow. In a previous public comment session, it was brought to our attention that many municipalities that were affected as we were by the number of COVID deaths created a format, a venue to recognize our residents, friends, loved ones that we lost during that time. As you all know, someone that was very inspirational to me and very active on the CDBG board died to COVID. I would like to work with this council to develop something to recognize those lives lost, because it has affected our community. And that's where I will end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Riley. Lastly, we have Councilman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam President. I feel like I'm the finale. No. I'm just joking. And also, of course, Council President goes after me. There are two things that I wanted to address. First of all, at Monday's work session, I was able to put forth an RL to attempt to amend the city code in order to allow for public comment at special business meetings. It needs a little bit of tweaking, and the Rules and Special Studies Committee is going to meet to hammer out what exactly we want that to look like. So I do want to solicit the public's feedback about, what would you want to see in this change, since we are sort of redefining potentially what a special business meeting is or what happens there. This is a chance to go big, right? If there's something that we want to see, please, I'll try to solicit some, do some outreach. The other thing that I wanted to talk about that I'm sure is going to be brought up over and over and over again is the ARPA funds specifically in relation to the general fund, right? We had this piece of legislation to try and release these funds from their restrictions, and we heard a lot about the general fund, how healthy it is, right? How much money we have, and it is the fiscally responsible thing to do to have some money on hand in case of, for example, who would have thought a pandemic or, any unforeseen circumstances. But also, I don't think it's financially responsible to keep all of that money in the general fund, right? It would be, in my opinion, the best if we responsibly spend that, right? If we just keep ballooning the general fund, what do we have to show for it, right? So we need to look at that as not just, it's not only the fiscally responsible thing to do to keep funneling more and more money into the general fund if we're not spending it on things that the city needs. And this is specifically also has to do with a large budget item that's coming down the pipeline. For those of you who tuned in or attended Monday's work session, there was talk of funding the community center, the rec center in the park in my district, Columbus Park, AKA many residents call it Asada Shakur Park. And one of the tenets, I guess, of my platform when I ran was investment in our youth. And so I believe that something like an indoor rec center would serve the youth and the families in the community, but not at the expense if we cannot fund it responsibly. So I vocally pushed back against the idea of using ARPA funds for this. So there hasn't been any legislation codifying that, but there was talk of that, and again, I'll rehash it, or I'm not going to rehash everything that I've said thus far, but that's, another example of something that's a completely inappropriate use of that money. And at the time, during the meeting, the mayor asked me, well, Councilwoman Friedman, how would you propose to fund the center? And I didn't have an answer at the time because that's not my job to come up with, the funding streams for projects that I'm not, proposing. I'm, on council, I'm I have oversight. But, if we're talking about how much money is in the general fund, what are we going to show for it? Well, here's an example, and I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, I'm just saying, is it a possibility that this might be a project where that would make sense? For example, of using the money from the general fund. And again, I'm not saying officially I think that we should do that, but isn't that exactly the kind of project that we should be using that money for, and not dipping into ARPA funds that are specifically restricted for a reason to go to those who are most affected? I mean, we say most affected, that sounds kind of vague, but I mean, people lost their livelihoods and lost family members and friends. And we are doing a disservice if we don't really hold a magnifying glass to what we're using these funds for, as we should be. We should be holding a magnifying glass to all of the funds that come across our desk, right? But yeah. And I just wanted to extend my thanks to everybody who stuck it out to the end of the meeting. I know I've said before, these are my favorite kind of meetings, are those that have a high attendance, but most people just peace out after the public comment. So I get it, but thank you for staying to the end and being engaged citizens and making your voice heard in government. Thanks.
Councilwoman Friedman, I will just end by saying just a couple thank yous that I wanted to send out. Number one, to Code and DPW. I continue to get calls from residents with all different types of needs, and they're very responsive, and I very much appreciate that. Second, I wanted to send out a big thank you to all of those who participated excuse me, in our series of cleanups. Although this one was the last one scheduled for the summer, doesn't mean that we won't necessarily have more. Sometimes just maybe it'll be a last minute kind of a thing. I also want to say a big thank you to those who donated books for our little libraries. We were able to fill up some of the little libraries in the west side. And lastly, I just wanted to say a big thank you to the residents on Grand Boulevard who came out about a week ago now, and during a very hot, sticky evening, to just have a discussion about certain issues that impact them as the rest of the city. Obviously, code, traffic, garbage, those sort of things. I felt that it was a very positive interaction. I love those sort of things, and I want to say thank you to them, and I'm looking forward to more. I also wanted to thank you to Councilman Scaringi for joining me for that. And with that, thank you everybody for coming. It's raining. Please drive home safe, and I will take a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.
No, because I've understood. Okay, I definitely. No.